Great. So, well, welcome everybody to this presentation about finding ice. Yeah, I don't think that I know it all, but it's just that I think that maybe it's interesting to hear what HLSK is doing when we go abroad to find ice and to have a multi-day trip. So that's what I hope to show you this evening. Let's see. Finding ice, how to start. I've been looking for some kind of structure in the presentation because there is so much to tell about finding ice that it's hard to not lose some kind of red line in it. So I hope you can follow the thing I came up with, and that's about discussing a cycle of tools that you can use for finding ice, and those tools work together. And we can't discuss all of them, but I hope to show you the important ones. First of all, who am I? I'm Rob. I live in Amsterdam with Willeke and my son Gijs. I used to be a software developer, but I am, you can say I retired early. I have a passion for natural ice, and that's something I think you can see on the screen on the right. Those are my GPS tracks in Scandinavia. And as you can see, I like to be where the good ice is. So I don't mind traveling. I don't mind sitting in the car. I don't mind being away for 1 or 2 weeks for natural ice skating. There's many tools for ice finding. I brought up this metaphor. It's about ice blocks, ice cubes that you make in your fridge. And each block represents one tool you can use. There is so many tools, like I said before, and there is no need to read all of those names of the tools, but it's just you can say this is my toolbox, and I have some things in it, and those things are working together. So it's not possible to discuss them all, and it's even less possible to discuss all the relations between those tools. But we go in into the important ones, I think. There's another structure we have in HLSK, and that's how far are you in your Nordic skating career? Because all those tools, you will find out that some of them you can use immediately, but for other tools you need some more experience, or you need to have seen different lakes in different countries, or you need to have seen satellite pictures and have had the experience of comparing that with the ice you found. So it's to know where you are. We use this model in HLSK, and it's good to know that all those different tools, well, in my experience, those tools are divided in your Nordic skating career. For instance, a first-timer, it's handy if he knows something about, okay, we go skating, we test the ice. If it's not good, we move to the next lake. The first-timer should also know something about deciding as late as possible and being flexible in where we sleep, that sort of things. I will come back to that later. It's also good if a first-timer knows something about Skridskonet and also knows something about that warm weather is good for the ice, instead of thinking, oh, this multi-day trip, it will be cancelled because there is some warm weather in the forecast. No, that's not the case. Actually, in HLSK, we like warm weather in Sweden because that gets the snow away from many lakes, and then with just one clear night, you often can skate again. So, and that continues more to the right in your skating career. all those tools for ice finding, they add up, and you can't do them all at once. You have to be patient and see a lot of ice before you can move on to the next. At least that's my experience. It took me 10 years at least to get all those tools in my head, that I know how it works. The first one, the first one is the most simple one. Driving to Sweden, for instance, or Norway or Finland or another country for that matter, pick a lake without any information. We did that in the old days. And if you are lucky, you will find some ice to skate, but the chance on that is pretty low. If you don't go far enough into the ice area, I would say, then the lakes are still open. For instance, when we drive through Germany, then the lakes are most often open there. If we drive Helsingborg, then the lakes, often it's the case that they are still open in Skåne. Then we drive on. But if you drive too far north, let's say above the line, maybe Oslo, Gävle, and it is January or February, then you come into snow. And then you don't find the skatable lakes too. The sweet spot, that's what I call the band or the area where there is strong, smooth, solid and snow-free ice. And it's, in my experience, it's almost always there. Every day of winter, it's there. But usually it is small, so you have to find it where it is. And that's what this presentation is about. So just skate and test, I think it's not enough. We have to add something to the toolbox. So, well, what's more obvious than using Skridskonet as your second tool? It's one of the best sites that I know. It's the best social media site that I love. And it has a lot of information in it. The map with the ESOPs, the tracks, pictures, it's all there, and it's all about real-time, real information. It happened. I think most of us here know this, the color dots on the map of Skridskonet. Maybe some people don't know about the white dot on the map. Well, that is new since 2 years ago in Skridskonet. That's if there is a FET report for that lake, but there is no ESOPs for that lake. So then you know you can click on the FET report to see the pictures or other things. And then you still know something about that lake without having an ice observation for that lake. So that's Skridskonet. And because of time tonight, I don't go far into Skridskonet because everybody here is member of a club. So we all have the possibility to explore Skridskonet ourselves. I advise you to do so because there is much more functionality than you have ever thought in Skridskonet. Sometimes it's a bit hidden, but if you click a lot in Skridskonet, you will find out new things too. So this information, together with skate and test, it will increase your ice finding results dramatically already. So that's a simple step, right? You do your planning for a multi-day trip or for the next day within a multi-day trip. You open Skridskonet, you look what happened today, and you decide, well, okay, we can do that tomorrow maybe as well. But of course, there is this challenge that what if the weather changes the ice between planning and skating? Skridskonet is about what happened yesterday. At least the things I showed on the previous slide. But there might be changes in the ice for tomorrow. And that all depends on the weather. So the next one we add is the weather forecast, the toolbox. And the weather forecast is not that simple as many people think, because with just the weather forecast, yeah, you can't do much. You have to know at least three things before using the weather forecast as a step after you studied ScriptConnect. For instance, you have to know when you look at the weather forecast, do I gamble on new ice tomorrow or do I gamble on old ice that got snow free? Because that both types of ice demand a very different type of weather. What is the influence of the predicted weather on new ice and on old ice? Because sometimes you think, ah, this is bad weather, but that bad weather, like rain or anything else, can be very good for the ice. So to use the weather forecast, you also have to know what is the influence of the predicted weather um, on the different types of ice. And the third thing you want to know, or you have to know before judging the weather forecast is the ice already skatable? Or does it still need a change to become skatable? Sometimes red dots on ScriptConnect, not skatable, oogbaar, they are still very useful because if you take into account the weather that is coming up, this red dot can easily change to a green dot the next day or 2 days after. So it's not just the weather forecast, you also have to know a few things about the current situation and about what you are looking for. And the current situation, I call that reference points because that's points in the past that are really true. That is, you can see that in Vetrapporter and ESOPs or pictures. And then you take the weather forecast and then you try to estimate what the weather will be tomorrow or in 2 or 3 days or even next week. The weather to look for, here are a few examples. And one thing I learned is that over the years, if I'm looking for ice, that it's the first question I ask myself, is there a chance on new ice? Or am I looking for old ice that gets skatable again? Because those two types, they demand different weather. Unless they are already skatable. If the new ice is thick enough, or if the old ice is smooth enough, then you only want light frost, no snow, stable weather. You don't want severe frost, because then it might get riemfrost or frostroezoer, or for the Dutch people, rijp on the ice. You want stable conditions with not too much cold weather. If it's not skatable yet, then you are looking for total different weather, in fact. Here is 2 examples, but there are many more, of course. For instance, when the new ice is too thin, then you like to have some severe frost. A clear night, dry air, low air temperature, and that will make the Cherenys maybe thick enough tomorrow or the day after. And then you can aim for that. But if you have old ice and a lot of snow has been falling, then you want cloudy, warm weather to remove the snow, the stubbening of the snow. And after that, you want most of the times 1 or 2 clear nights are enough to make that ice skatable again if the snow got wet enough. So that's the first question that I encourage to ask yourself when you are looking for ice. Am I looking for new ice or am I looking for old ice? In new ice, you have to know a few things about it when it might happen that you skate on the best ice there is. The whole column of water needs to be colder than 4 degrees before ice can start. Even that's the way it is, because when the water is colder than 4 degrees, then the really cold water can stay on top. It can cool down 3 to 0 degrees, and then the ice can start. And that's not the case if the whole column of water is higher than 4 degrees. And the sky best be clear, because heat radiation to space is twice as much effective compared to low air temperature and or water evaporation. In fact, I have seldom seen new ice on a lake without clear sky. Even when it's -5, -6, the air temperature, if it's cloudy, it's not often that I have seen the ice start. Clear sky is so much more important than those other two factors. And that's, of course, something to remember because we are all used, at least the Dutch people here, we are all used to, when we look at the forecast, we look for minus temperatures in the air. But believe me, it's not the most important factor. The clear sky is much more important. And for new ice to start, you want the wind to preferably be low to lessen the movement. I have the picture on the right, that's Cherenys, but it was windy when it started, and then you get this not so smooth Cherenys. So you would like it to be a low wind when the Cherenys starts. For old ice, stubbies, it's totally different. If there is thick ice on a lake already and then it started snowing, this fallen snow must first get wet before it can refreeze to skatable ice again. There is now mainly three important reasons for the snow to get wet. It's either warm weather, fall, or it's rain. That goes the fastest, I think. But the other factor is that the snow can push the ice underwater, and then water is sucked up by the snow, and the snow gets wet too. The stubning, that's what the process is called on the picture of the right. The snow is sucking up water from underneath. That goes fastest in warm, rainy weather, and when the snow layer is heavier than the 10% of the ice layer that is above water. When the snow has become wet enough, then 1 or 2 clear nights will be enough to freeze it again, normally when it was not too thick, the snow layer. Otherwise you have this risk of overfreeze, double ice. But well, my experience is that in a lot of cases it's ready again within 3 or 2 days, and I have also seen situations that it's ready in 1 day again. That's hard to predict what the stubning time is and what the freezing time is after the snow got wet. And like I said, overfreeze is a risk if you are too early on the lake. But despite that, it's still good to look for warm weather in the weather forecast when there is old ice enough in the region that you are planning to go to or in the region where you are. But there is also pitfalls with the forecast. One of the pitfalls is that I see, at least in HLSK, I see a lot of people typing in a place name in SMHI or in the Norwegian site, and they look up the forecast for that place. You have to do that for every place you want to see. But the second thing is, and that's even more time consuming, it's 1 out of 50 scenarios from 1 out of 4 models that you are looking at. There is 4 big weather models, the European, the American, the AI weather model nowadays, and you have the British model. SMHI and the Norwegians are using the European model. That's one of the picture on the right, the ECMWF model. And already there you can see that the one scenario on the left for the place you typed in, and I typed this in yesterday for the place Dovre in Norway. It's one of the places where I expect new ice to start soon. And on the right you see already that the European model doesn't calculate 1 scenario. No, it calculates 50 scenarios each time it runs, and it runs 4 times a day. And on the left side, you only see 1 out of that 50 scenarios. So that's a bit strange, of course, because you think, this is the forecast for Dovre. But in fact, already the European model actually says, no, that's only 1 out of the 50 scenarios. The other scenarios predict something else. And as you can see, this is the 7th October, and here it's 9 October. Only for 2 days later, there is already 6 degrees margin in the forecast. And if you go further on to the 11th, 12th of October, then there is, let's see, I have to, yeah. Then there is even from 6 to -4, 10 degrees margin in the forecast. And you are looking only to one line of this forecast if you type in a place. So it's not only about time consuming, but it's also very uncertain if you use the forecast for predicting where to skate. So if you keep on using the forecast, I would recommend, that's one of my tips for tonight, I would recommend that you shift your intention from typing in places in the weather sites to using weather maps on that are behind the scenarios. For instance, this is the same weather forecast for Dovre for the coming days, but now you see what will on a global level will be happening. You can find those maps at wettercentrale.de. That's for free for the first 7 days. And as you can see above Finland, the blue dot above Finland, this is the European map if you look well. Here is Sweden. I hope you see my mouse pointer. I'm not sure about that. Jan, can you confirm that? Or
yes, we can see that.
Okay, great. Here is Sweden, here is Finland. And this is a low pressure area here. And the nice thing about the weather on the northern hemisphere, at least, is that low pressures always turn against the clock. And this low pressure here turns against the clock. That means, and the wind follows the white isobar lines, that means that above Sweden the wind is from the north with this low pressure here and the high pressure on the west side of Norway. So, and the high pressure area always turns with the clock. So it always goes like this. And together with the low pressure here, this takes care of northern wind in Sweden. So when I see this and I think, okay, all those scenarios with different temperatures, that's not what really interests me. What really interests me is that this high pressure, and this map is valid for Sunday, the 12th of October. So that's coming Sunday. Well, I can expect some east lightning in the high altitude lakes, I think, at least in Norway, because Norway is close to the high pressure, not much chance on snow or rain. So this is very good for the start of the season, maybe. And if you look at those maps, I can tell you, if you get a feel for it, for low pressure and high pressure, then your estimation about the weather for the coming week is much better than when you type in places at those weather sites. Oh, sorry. So the next step in finding ice for me is that I made my dependence on the forecast, I made it lower. I don't look up all those places anymore. I just take a look at the global picture. And then I say to myself, okay, that's that. Enough time spent on the weather forecast, because you can spend hours on the weather if you're not careful with it. And then I add 2 other tools from my toolbox to the cycle of ice finding. Instead of using the weather forecast, I think it's about 10 years ago, maybe, or 8 years ago, I started using the weather actuals instead of the weather forecast. And with weather actuals, I mean what really happened instead of looking at the forecast. To do that, you also have to add one other technique to your ice finding skills, and that is the flexibility to decide as late as possible where you go skating. Without as late as possible, it's no use to shift to the weather actuals, because, well, you need the actuals so far to decide where you go skating. But to decide as late as possible where to go skating, you need to do a few things with your group. So first we dive in this ALAP thing. And that ALAP, this is a picture from our education material in HLSK, from preparation. As late as possible, that means that you book your sleeping place not before you looked where to go skating tomorrow. No, you book that sleeping place after you have looked where you go skating tomorrow. Then in the evening you make multiple plans for the next day. The next day you get up early, you check the actual weather from that last night, and then you decide on which plan you are going to execute on that day. And this ALAP, it's for newcomers in the group. It might be hard because people want to know where they sleep. People want to know, they start asking often, which area do we go to on a multi-bay trip? Then I say, well, we go to Scandinavia. Okay, but where in Scandinavia do we go? Yeah, we don't know yet. We decide that as late as possible. And often people ask also, which lake are we going to skate? Yeah, you don't know that until the last moment to make the chance on good ice as big as possible. But there is one thing about this as late as possible decision making, and that's that you can be in a time shortage. You can be in pressure from your group. There is a lot to do. You have to look at SkitsConnect. You have to look at the weather actuals. When we go further in this presentation, there is also things like satellite pictures and other stuff. You have to do a lot. So this ALAP goes hand in hand with something else, and that is what can you do as soon as possible. And with as soon as possible, I mean before departure on your multi-day trip. And that's all kind of things, even more than the things you do as late as possible. There's all kinds of things you should do before you leave on a multi-day trip. You should do your group formation, for instance, preparation meetings. You should educate your first-timers a bit about the flexibility for as late as possible. You should divide some task roles and the decision-making in the group. Because once you are in the field and you are in the cycle of deciding where to skate as late as possible, it's not handy to have a discussion about, but who is deciding this actually? Or how do we do this? What is my task in the group? You don't want to spend time on that as soon as you are out in the field. Equipment check, food preparation, making sure everybody travels light, and have a communication-friendly transport like a minivan or maybe 2 cars, but not 5 cars because that's very unhandy. You should all arrange that up front because that makes the situation that you can decide where to go skating as late as possible. And that enhances your ice finding skills. It gives you time to look at reference points from SkitsConnect in combination with the weather actuals that happened. Then with the actuals, there also are a few pitfalls. For instance, many sites that people are used to, or they have automatically on their mobile phone. AccuWeather is on a lot of mobile phones automatically. MSN Weather is used by many people who use Microsoft 365 or something. And even windy.com, those sites, if you think you are looking at actuals, you are not. Because those sites, they don't have access to all the real measure points in countries like Norway and Sweden. But what they do, in fact, is they use the forecast for the time slot 0, for the time slot now. So they use the start of the prediction model, and they act as if the current situation with the weather is exactly like that, but that's not the case. I have seen a lot of situations where humidity, cloudiness, and temperature are totally different from what those sites show you as they say it is, but it's not. So be careful with those sites. If you are looking at actuals, you should really go to measure stations like SMI has in Sweden, UR in Norway, Skridskonet, the thermometers on Skridskonet, Trafikverket in Sweden. Those are the real actuals, and that's what you should use. But there's another thing with those measuring points, and that's that they are often in the valleys, or almost always in the valleys. This is a small piece of Norway from Skridskonet where the thermometers are, and you can see that they are all here near the roads in the valleys. But the lakes, the interesting lakes, at least for the start of the season, they are up the mountains, and that's a total different weather. So also take that into account, that if you are using the actuals, take into account that the altitude is so important for it, that you either try to find the few stations that are up the mountains, like this one here, or use the weather stations from the weather amateurs. There is a site for that in Europe where all the weather amateurs gather their information, and that's real-time information, and not the prediction on timestamp 0. So that's the pitfall with the actuals. But if you are, if you have the feeling for it, that you can not step into these two pitfalls, then the actuals are your friend, and they are so much better than the forecast. Because what many of us do, and that's one very good thing, you take a reference point from Skridskonet, and this is a real ESOPs from yesterday on Skridskonet, from Ulrike in Norway, a lake that has gotten new ice, and then you follow the actual weather, and then you can predict if it's skateable in the coming days. And because you use real observations from Skridskonet, you decide as late as possible. And if you use the actuals from the weather right, you can't miss, because there is not much uncertainty suddenly in your prediction. So this is the way actually to, and it sounds very simple, but it's not that simple. But if you force yourself to skip the forecast, use the actuals, and do it as late as possible, then you really, the chance that you miss this beautiful black ice here on, this is an old picture, of course, but this is on Kjevilvatnet in Norway, then you don't miss it. So we are now already in this cycle with 5 tools, and this is a guarantee for success. But of course, there might be situations that you miss out on the reference points. For instance, if you go to an area where there is no information on Skridskonet yet, or if you go to an area where there is no club that's on Skridskonet, or if you go to a country where Skridskonet is not being used at all, like Haleska, that went together with two from the Skåne club to the Czech Republic. There is no Skridskonet there. Then you miss out on those reference points, and then it gets a little bit more difficult, of course, because you want to use the weather actuals and reference points to predict what will be skateable tomorrow. So what do you do then? Then you move on to the next point, and that is that you add this Sentinel-2 satellite pictures to your cycle of tools you use. And I say here Sentinel-2 because that's the one I like most. but there are of course other satellites that also give information. But for time's sake on this evening, I have done Sentinel-2 in this presentation. But to use the satellite pictures, that's, well, it's easier said than done. After many years of reading satellite pictures, I feel like a kind of a doctor, a radiologist in the hospital reading X-rays. It's a tedious job. You can spend a lot of time on it, and even then, it's not sure that you are right. This picture is here below is Gjende, a famous lake in Norway, and this lake is Besvatnet, and that is 300 meters higher than Gjende. This wall is famous in Norway for a summer walk, because if you stand here on this wall, you are on the same height, on the same altitude as Besvatnet, but you look down with an amazing view on Gjende. And this picture is from November 2018, so that's already 7 years ago. And I was together with Lars Pettersson and Maria Lindqvist down in the valley, and we were looking at this picture and we thought, well, is that black ice or not on Besvatnet? We knew Gjende was open because you can see that from the road, but like I said, Besvatnet is high up, and the walk takes at least, it's a heavy walk, 2 hours up to Besvatnet. So if you are doing that, yeah, you want to be, let's say, 80% sure that this is skatable black ice. Well, and this is where a lot of looking at pictures comes in. You see here these tiny gray white things here, and you see here some loose slag here on the east side, and if you look well, you see here a bit, not really black, but a bit kind of gray. Well, that's enough to think, okay, this might be thin black ice. Let's wait 1 or 2 nights, and then if there is no snow falling, so we followed the radar on both UR and SMI to see if there is no snow, and then we take the guess to walk up. There was not a new satellite picture the next day, so we had to do it with this 2-day-old picture. But the weather was clear sky, cold, dry air, so we thought, well, if it was new ice, then it should be thick enough after 2 days. And here you see the result. This is 2 days after the satellite picture. On the left you see Gjende. It's open water, like we saw on the satellite picture. And this is the black ice of Besvatnet in Norway. And as you can see, the proof that it's skatable is here, because I circle now Lars Pettersson, who is skating there on Besvatnet with a magnificent view. Of course, we walked here up this wall, and I walked to here to take this picture, and you could look down on Gjende, Jotunheimen, and this amazing surroundings. But without this satellite picture, we wouldn't have had any information. We wouldn't have had that reference point to start with and to add up the cold weather from 2 days. So then it would have been hard. So that's what satellite pictures add, especially in areas when there is no information whatsoever. You can use the satellite picture as a starting point. Another example of satellite pictures, the previous example was for new ice. This is an example for old ice. This is Höga-Kusten, Dokstafjärden in 24, in March. If you look at that picture in normal color, in Sentinel-2, then it's hard to see if is this snow or is it snow-free ice. For this piece here, you can see that will be stubby ice. But this here, yeah, then you wonder what it is. Is this skatable or not? That's another trick in the Copernicus browser for Sentinel-2. Don't forget to put it on to infrared, because then suddenly the snow-free stub ice turns into the blue spots like here, and then you know, okay, so that stub is snow free. And here there is, yeah, this is what I called half stub. There is more snow spots here and here, but this area, and we could reach this other area, and from here with a little bit of walking, we could reach here, this area, and we could do a very big tour on Dokstafjärden on Höga Kusten. But I wouldn't have said that if I would have only looked at the normal color picture. So don't forget to put it in infrared too, and you can use other bands in the Sentinel-2 browser as well to show other things. This evening is too short to for a deep dive into the satellite pictures, but like with Skritskonet, we all have access to the Copernicus browser. We can all look around and we can all compare it to pictures that will appear on Skritskonet. And by doing that, you will learn a lot about using satellite pictures. This is the stubbies we had on Dokstafjärden at Höga Kusten. Yes. So now we have a system that works everywhere because we have reference points either from Skritskonet or from satellite pictures. We decide as late as possible, we use the weather actuals, and then we skate and test. And if we, every day of the multi-day trip, we follow this circle, then it's pretty sure you have a really good skating multi-day trip. And that system works in all cold countries. When I was in Japan together with Christer, also in this call, and Caroline, we didn't know anything about Hokkaido, but it works the same. The ice finding system works perfectly. Once you get a feel for which area has too much snow, which area has had a little frost, not cold enough, but what is the area where the snow is not severe and frost and a bit of warm weather interchange, then you find the sweet spot. Even if it's a new country where you can't read anything, and there was only one guy that skated there. You see him here on the picture. That is Atuhiru, and here is Christer skating. And this lake that we found, that is this green dot on Hokkaido in Japan. But we found it using the same system as I showed on the previous slide. Satellite pictures and actual weather information. Of course, still also when you are abroad in a foreign country, deciding as late as possible is essential to do this. Okay, so we have this system. It works in all cold countries, but still we have misses, of course. It still happens that in the morning when you are at a lake and you have, even if you looked so careful about reference points, Skritskonet, Sentinel, you decided as late as possible, you took into account the weather actuals from last night, you looked at the radar where the snow showers went, you looked at the spots where the clear sky was, but still you can have a miss. And with a miss, I mean that you go with your group and you drive to the lake. By the way, that's the most thrilling moment of the day, I think, if you drive up a hill and behind the hill there is this lake that you picked for today. And when you drive over the hill, then you see what the ice is, and then you know, will my day be good or is this a bad day? So what happens if it is you see already, there is snow on the ice, or that's in other occasions, you think everything is okay, the ice looks shiny, but you step on the ice and it turns out to be overijs. That's a shame too. What do you do then in the morning at the lake when your chosen plan doesn't work? Then you have to rescue the day because you feel the pressure of the group behind you, People start asking, what are we going to do? And there is no time to do this process in total again, because this took your evening before. And well, some people are so fast with the Sentinel pictures that they can come up with an alternative lake on the spot. But well, you should check also the weather actuals for that lake. So often it takes too much time to do the whole process again and again. So you want a short process to save the day. And that's what I call the technique of driving up, driving down. That's that's what in your toolbox for repairing the day, for repairing your chosen plan. And what is driving up, driving down? What do I mean by that? Driving up is for me that I drive from the current ice to thicker, older ice. And driving down is going to a lake where you know that the ice there is thinner or newer. And that's important to always know. If you choose a lake for the day, you should not only know things about the ice on that lake, but you should also know things about the other lakes in the same area, because you don't want to be driving 2 or 3 hours in daylight, because that is a waste of your day. You want to stay in the same area, but you want to have variation in the ice, because that increases the chance that you find ice that solves the problem you had on your first lake. So driving up is going to thicker ice, driving down is going to thinner ice. And what is thicker and thinner, or older and newer? Then you have to know something about those lakes, the lake order in which they freeze. Well, I can't draw very good, but this is a lake that is split in half, and you look from the side to that lake. So this is the ice layer here. Oh, sorry, this is in summer. This is the water layer. And the water temperature is 18 degrees on top and 6 degrees in the bottom in summer. In autumn, the lake cools down, and at some point in autumn, it's the water in the total lake is 4 degrees. And from that point in winter, when the water cools down further, the top layer can go down to 0. And every lake has its own water volume, and it means that the time needed to cool down a lake is different for every lake, even in the same area that has the same weather. So it means each lake needs its own time period of heat loss, resulting in different moments for lakes within the same area to freeze. And the way it works can save your day, because in your area where you are, without having to drive many hours, you can find a lake that has thicker ice, and you can find a lake that has thinner ice, and that's exactly what you need. An example, this is the area about Hormunden in north of Wermland in Dalarna. Did someone try to say something, or was it someone that came in? I think that someone came in. But this area here, as you can see, this is the period of the 1st of November to 15th of November. It's only very small lakes with low water volumes that got the first ice. This lake is a little bit better, but it has a red dot because it was only thin ice. And there was a gray dot for Hormunden, the big lake in the area, and that said there was no ice yet. Then a few days later, suddenly Hormunden started in the north, because that's the shallow part of Hormunden. And those lakes here, they started with ice too. And then another few days later, then the whole of Hormunden was skatable, and the more deep lakes here were skatable too. So in this area, there are a lot of lakes, but they all come up with new ice in a different time frame. And you don't know when it is. In a weak winter, it will be later than the 1st of November, but in a strong winter, it might be the end of October. That you don't know, but what you do know is that this order of freezing is the same is almost the same in every winter, because the volume of those lakes stays the same relative to each other. And once you know that, you can use that for doing variation in which lake to go to. There's another thing about lakes, they freeze in generations. So it's not only variations between different lakes, but there is also variation within one lake. And this is Lake Toften, that's a bit north of Wetteren. It's, I think it's west from Askersund. And I have mapped the generations of this lake by reading satellite pictures from the last few years. And I also have done some research about Vertrapporter and ESOPs. And that gave me the insight that this lake, Toften, it freezes in generations. Generation 1, it's the side and the base. Generation 2 is a bit more to the middle. And generation 3 even more to the middle, and so on. And here, generation 5, that might be open water if you get there in a weak winter, or in a strong winter it is the newest ice on that lake. So not only there is variation between lakes, but there is also variation on the lakes that are a little bit bigger than freezing in one generation. And exactly that generation freeze is why the heart of a lake often freezes last. So once you know that there is variation in the area you have, you can use that. Another thing you can use is that stupning goes faster if the ice is thinner. And that's because 10% of the ice, I think we all learned at school when we were young, 10% of the iceberg is above water and 90% is below water. The same goes for an ice surface on a lake. 10% of the ice approximately is above the water surface, 90% is under. If snow falls and it is heavier than this 10% of ice that is above water, the total snow layer, then the ice gets pushed underwater. And then the stupning is a lot faster than if you depend only on rain or warm weather. So this means that the thinner the ice is, the faster the stupning goes with the same snow amount. And that you can also use to search for another lake if your plan A for the day was not good. Here you can see it on this satellite picture. This is also Norway. This lake here, Rødungen, that's on a high altitude. It was the earliest lake in the area. You can see it, the color, that's stuppies. Then the lake here, it's bigger. It has more volume. It froze later. So the stuppies layer is thinner. It's darker gray. And here, this lake in the valley, these lakes, they were last. And you can see those spots here and here, the in-stream, that had the last ice. So close to each other, you already have a lot of variation in the lakes. And you can use that because, for instance, if you took Rødungen as plan A and you found out that the ice was not smooth when you arrived at the lake, it was bumpy, it was old stuppies and not nice to skate, then you can take your plan B or even your plan C for the day without driving too far away. And there is more variations to use for driving up and driving down. We already talked about water volume. We also, very important, is altitude for lakes. North-south, the more north, on average, the colder it is. In some countries that's west and east, like in the Czech Republic, but that's another story. You have microclimates in areas. The amount of water flowing through a lake also is decisive for when the lake freezes. You can choose between fresh water, brackish water and salt water. Salt water is often later than the fresh water. And also important is if a lake has a lot of shadow because of high rocks, high walls on the south side, or it's very sunny and then the instrålning from the sun is warming up the water in autumn, is keeping the water warmer in autumn than in a shadow lake. So driving up and driving down means that you know what you do once you are on a lake that is not good enough for the day. You use these variations to go either to a thicker ice lake, if the ice was too thin or too weak when you started, or you go to a thinner ice lake when the ice was not smooth or bumpy or there was other things. And the importance of the different variation factors, well, that's experience. You have to find out yourself. It's impossible for me to say altitude is more important than water volume or the other way around, because it's not the way it is. You have to get a feel for it. Here is in Wermland, a few lakes in Wermland, north of Karlstad. And our plan A was Lake Lunden, because we thought, oh, that's a bigger lake, probably a bit newer ice than here Emden has. It's smaller. But to our surprise, Emden was thinner, but still thick enough, and incredibly smooth, very good ice to skate. And when we went to Lake Lunden, it was thicker and older. It had bumps. Maybe it closed. Maybe it had a bit of snow that stooped, and but it was. It looked black. It was zwartsteub, but it was not as good as Emden was. So yeah, you have to get a feel for which variation is more important. And that's the only thing you can do about that is go skating a lot. It's my advice. That's my advice anyway, to go skating a lot, because it makes life better. Okay, having said this, I come back to the beginning of the presentation, the sweet spot. And the sweet spot, that is the area where ice is strong enough, hardest and smoothest. And this sweet spot, that shifts the whole winter. Almost every day it changes, and it is all depending on the weather. There can be multiple sweet spots in different areas. For instance, let's say one in eastern Norway, one in Wermland, and one near Gefle when it's, let's say, January. There can be sweet spots different sweet spots at the same time. But within an area, like, let's say, Wermland, there is almost all the time, there is only one sweet spot. So if there is multiple sweet spots, my experience is that it's in different areas. And this driving up, driving down tool enables you to, in combination, of course, with making your plan A, B, C the evening before, enables you to save the day within your area, because you already thought about what do I do if the lake I picked is having bumpy ice, for instance. Okay, then I go to a lake with newer ice. What do I do if the lake has too thin ice? Then I go to a lake with older ice, because it might be thicker. So now we have this for this evening at least, complete system. Those tools, if you use it the way I try to explain, then you are pretty sure you have a very good multi-day trip. It is complete enough for planning and damage control, and when you are under pressure from your group. And of course, you can add more tools as you like. There is many more tools in the toolbox for finding ice, like the depth of lakes, the water flow on SMAE. There is more social media than Skritskonet, of course. You can use Facebook, you can use Strava to find reference points. You can use other satellites than Sentinel-2, like the radar site from Jens from Stockholm, ISAR, that says something about the smoothness of the ice. But my experience is that if you start in your first years by using them all, then you get mixed up. But if you if you take an approach that is step by step and using these tools, then you start to know how it works, and then you can go further. My last tip for tonight is that there is a shortcut. If you don't have time to do all this, if you don't have time to follow SkritskoNet, if you don't have time to spend hours on satellite pictures, there's one thing that you can do. Take a satellite picture from a big area, like this one. From here is Oslo. Here is the east side of Norway. This is Värmland. This is the Frykengøyene here. So Karlstad, you see here the K from Karlstad, it's here. If you look at this picture, you see where the snow border is going, like this, here, and then here up. If it's beginning of winter, then it's best to gamble on lakes that are above the snow border, because there was not much time yet to freeze over. So then you want to be in the cold area, and that's often where a little bit of snow is. But later on in winter, if you have to guess, if you don't have time for all those other tools, then you go below the snow border. Then you take, for instance, this area here or this area here. And then it's my experience that that's a kind of shortcut. If you work hard and no time for SkritskoNet, or for instance, then take these guesses, and then from there you make your own reference points, and from there, if you have time, you look at the weather actuals, and then you can either move, you can do driving up, or you can drive down, lower altitude, higher altitude, north, south, bigger lake, smaller lake. You can calibrate your sense for good ice.